Good morning, grade 9. So, nakapag-send na ako ng mga related videos sa ating lesson, sa module natin sa yung mga nakaraang araw. So, for this time, I just want to recap regarding our lessons about radicals. So, reminders lang sa mga video na sinend ko sa inyo, which is the related videos about this topic, panoorin ninyo ito ng mabuti nang sagutan ninyo yun sa modules ninyo. At the same time, I'm going to give also my insights and my explanation regarding these topics. When we say radicals, these are expressions which contains the radical sign. Kaya tinawag siyang radicals. This is the radical signs, or what called the root. Now, what are the parts of the radicals, radical expression? In this case, so if you're going to read this, the root of x to the nth root of the x to the y. So, ibig sabihin, nth root, x yung part na to, tsaka ito. So what are the parts? Yung n dyan is what we call the index. Then yung x is what we call the radical. Radical. Ito yung number na nasa loob ng radical sign. And y there is what we call exponent. Exponent. So these are the basic parts of the radical expression. Now let's go with the number 2. In number 2, that is square root of 16. This one, square root of 16. Now, when I'm going to ask you, what will be the index of square root of 16? The index there is, 2. Bakit wala naman dyan 2? Kasi po, sa square root, hindi na nilalagay yung 2. So, automatically, pwede yung square root yan. Someone ask you, anong index niyan? That is 2. Then, the radical is equals to 16. Kasi yun yung nasa loob ng radical root, radical sign. What about the exponent? Exponent niyan is, ang exponent nito, that is 1. That's the exponent. Now, what about in number 3? Ano ang kanyang index? The index is 3. Ano ang kanyang radical? The radical is 24 would be your radical. Radical dahil the radical. And the exponent is 1 would be the exponent. Those are the basic parts of the radical expression. Now let's go on to classification of roots of radical expression. Okay. In number 1. Again, what will be the index of this radical expression? In the previous lesson, it said that kapag walang nakalagay dyan na 2, kapag walang nakalagay dyan na number, automatically ang index niyan is 2. So therefore, you can read this as a square root of 16. Now remember, when we say square root of a number, that's what we call the inverse of what we call the square of a number. So therefore, this one, the square root of 16 is 4. Okay. Pero, remember, since it is an even number, the roots are, the index is even number. So, kapag ang index niya is even number, laging dalawa yung roots niya. We can say that 4 and negative 4. Kasi po, remember, 4 times 4 is 60. Diba? And also, 4 or negative 4 times negative 4 is 16 din. Ibig sabihin, remember, kapag even ang kanyang index, laging dalawa ang roots niya. So what are those? How can we classify those roots? The positive one is what we call the principal roots. Okay, that's the principal roots. Now what about this negative one? This negative one is what we call the secondary, or what we call the negative roots. Negative roots. So remember, again, kapag even ang inyong index, laging dalawang roots niyan. One is the principal roots, which is what we call the positive roots, and the other one is the secondary roots, which is known as what we call the negative roots. Now, what about in case we're in the second number, which is cube root of 8? Cube root of 8, this one. Cube root of 8. Okay. So remember, the index here is 3, which is an odd number. So conversely, we can say that the cube root of 8 is 2. Kasi po, that's 2. Kasi po, if we're going to multiply 2 times 2 or times 2, it gives you a number of 8. An answer of 8. So therefore, the cube root of 8 is 2. Now this time, wala siyang negative roots. Only what we call the principal roots. The positive roots. And the principal roots. So wala tayong negative roots kapag ang kanyang index is odd number. So that's only principal roots. Now what about this one? The fourth root of 81. Fourth root of 81. Okay. Diba it will give you 3. Kasi 3 times 3 times 3 and times 3 will give you an answer of 81. Diba? Okay. Now, again, just a recap of the first lesson. Ano ang index natin dito? The index here is 4. And 4 is an even number. Kapag even number, ibig sabihin, dalawa laging yung roots niyan, di ba? We have what we call the principal roots and the negative roots. In this case, our principal root is 3. And our negative roots, or what we call the secondary roots, is negative 3. Yeah. So therefore, it can be positive 3 and negative 3 as the answer for the principal and the negative, or what we call the secondary roots of a radical expression. Now let's go on to our next lesson, which is how are we going to transform this exponential expression into a radical form. Okay. In number 1, we have 8 to the exponent of 3 over 4. So let us look how we're going to transform this. Now, if we're going to transform this or exponential expression into radical form, it's just look like this. Going to write first a radical sign, and then you're going to put that base into, that base will become your radical. The base should be the radical. And what will happen to this one, to this numerator, to this 3, this will become the exponent. And what will happen to this 1, 4, this will become the index. So if you're going to write this clearly, we have here fourth root of 8 cubed. For further solving, we have here fourth root, and this is 8 to the 3, that is 64 times 3. You're going to expand this one. So that is 64 times 8, that is 2, carry 3, that is 512. So that's 512. So this will be the form of this exponential expression. What about in number 2? In number 2, we have here quantity a n to the 1 half. Take note of the quantity sign ha. If ita sa quantity, ibig sabihin yan, yung dalawang number na yan ay magkasama sa isang quantity. So we're going to transform this into radical sign. Write the radical sign here. Since naka-quantified siya, ibig sabihin, magkasama yan yung isang quantified sa loob. So ibig sabihin yan, silang dalawa, yung 8n is nasa loob yan ng radical. That will be the radical. Now what will happen to this 2? This 2 will become the index siya yung nandito. So 2, yung 1 siya yung nandito. And since, sabi natin, kapag yan ay square root, hindi natin kailangan i-appear yung 2 kasi mathematical error yun. So we're going to erase 2 here. And also, alam naman natin na ang number na walang exponent ay nangangahulugan. Someone ask you what will be the exponent of 8 or a number. Automatically, di ba, exponent can is 1. So it is also non-negligible na maglagay pa rin dyan ng 1. So we're going to erase that. Simply, the square root of 8. Yan siya. What about in number 3? Number 3. In number 3, we have quantity 4 to the 5th, then raised to 1 half. Again, ang gagawin nyo muna dyan para hindi kayo malito, is you're going to multiply 5 to 1 here. So 4, multiply niya, this will be 5 over 2. So the transform form now is 4 to the exponent of 5 over 2. Again, create a radical sign. So this base na 4, this will become the radical. Then this numerator, which is 5, becomes the exponent of the radical. And denominator of the exponent here becomes the index. So again, di ba square root yan? 2 na yan. So automatically aalisin mo yun siya. So yan lang siya. That would be your expression or the radical expression which came from the exponential expression which is quantity 4 to the 3 raised to 1. What about this one? What about the other one? In number 4. In number 4 we have 6, then x to the 1 half. Okay, now, tingnan natin ha, saan lang yung may exponent dyan? It's clearly stated here that exponent is only for x. So, hindi kasama yung 6 dyan. So, this is 6, then, ito lang, yung gagawa natin ng radical sign. Radical sign, and this is, again, this would becomes the radicand. That 2 becomes the index here, since hindi natin pwede ilagay kasi square root na yan, and 1 should be the exponent here. So, ganyan na lang siya. Hindi natin pwede ilagay yung dyan yung 1, hindi pwede ilagay yung 2. Kasi nga, yung 2 na nangahulugan na yan ay square root. At yung 1, hindi naman kailangan lagyan ng 1 dyan kasi alam naman natin na x alone has what we call an exponent of 1. So, ganyan lang siya. That will be your radical sign. Or radical expression value. So, this time, balik na rin naman natin. So, this time, we're going to have the radical expression and we're going to transform this into what we call exponential or rational expression or rational exponent. An expression exponent, rational exponent, or rational expression maybe. Now, in this case, we're going to read this as the c root of a square times b cubed. So, gagawa tayo ngayon na exponential, na ano ng ganyan, quantity. Kasi dalawa sila nandiyan. So, we're going to write here a square and then b cubed. Since this is c, so nandito yan, 1 over c. Kasi po, ang yung dalawang yan na magkasama na yan, meron yan dito 1. So yan siya. Now, if we're going to make this what we call individual rational exponent, so gagawin natin kasi multiply natin ito dito. So this becomes a then 2 over c and then b then 3 over c. So that will be your rational exponent of this radical expression. Now what about the number 2? Number 2 we have here 5 square. Okay? So, maglagay tayo ito ng 5. Now, lalagay tayo ng fraction sa taas kasi fraction yan. Now, what will happen to this one? To the exponent of the radical? That would be your numerator. And then 7 here, that would be your denominator. That will be the denominator of your exponential expression. In number 6. Number 6, again, we have here, just like this one. So that is x, y square, then z. And this is 1 over 6. 1 over 6. Kasi dito, meron dyan 1, and then 6, yung nasa, kung nakukunan ninyo, yung index siya yung naging denominator kapag ginawa nyo siyang rational exponent. Tandaan nyo ha, the index will become the denominator of the rational exponent. Then simplify natin siya. This will be x to the 1, 6, then y, multiply mo yung 2 doon, that is 2 over 6, and then z, 1 over 6. Since ito ay pwede mong pwede mo siyang i-simplify. This is x, 1 over 6, to the 1 over 6 rather, then y to the 1/3, and z to the 1/6. So that is how are we going to transform radical expression into rational exponent. Remember, the index becomes the denominator of the exponent and the exponent of the radicals becomes the numerator of the rational